Hi, this is Bill. One of the things I really enjoy doing at Christmas time is making gifts for people, and this year I was able to make a really special project. Over the last year or so, I've been getting more and more into traditional woodworking, and one of the people who I've been following for even longer than that is Doug Stowe. Doug is a woodworker and teacher. He writes about the work that he does teaching woodworking in schools, and he also is a published author and does a lot of work with making boxes. So this year I decided to work through Doug Stowe's basic box making book and to make his first project in here, the basic lift lid box. So this is my version of Doug Stowe's basic lift lid box. As you can see, I changed his design a little bit. Instead of being a square, mine is a rectangular shape. My box is made out of oak, and the lid is made out of a beautiful piece of zebra wood that my good friend Tom gave me, with an oak strip that sits a little bit proud of the zebra wood. So you can see the interior and the lid of the box. The lid is the place where I changed the design from Doug's book the most. Instead of having a solid piece of wood, I made mine out of two strips of zebra wood with this strip of oak down the middle. I also changed it so the edge is beveled some here. There's this angle on it. And I really did that as much for the fact that you can really see the beautiful grain in that zebra wood. Once it's cut, I was trying to sand down to get to that grain, and I realized that cutting gave me the best exposure of that grain. So come and take a look as I work through building these in the shop. Merry Christmas, James and Mom. I started by ripping down a piece of oak stock that I had, and this would form the sides of the box. This was a piece that I had picked up at a really low price and stuck away for a future project. And so I'm cutting the first side down here and then flipping things over. There was a small crack in one piece, so I trimmed that off and then trimmed both sides down to be the same size. Next I went ahead and planed the stock down. This was partly to get it down to the width I wanted, but also because I had gotten this piece of stock from a cutoff bin, and there was some purple paint marking one side. So I planed it down. Once things were set, I took it over to the miter saw to begin making the mitered cuts for the corners of the box. I started by cutting the pieces that would become the ends of the boxes. And then after cutting both ends, I went ahead and cut the sides, which would be longer pieces for a rectangular shape, which you can see assembled there. Now the next step was to take those side and end pieces and cut a dado slot for the bottom of the box to sit into. So I did this in a way that I was reasonably pleased with. I slid those over the table saw, and then I added a little shim to push them out to the depth that I wanted to make a wider dado slot. And here you can see the dado slots in the box, and then I'm taking the piece of oak plywood that I was using for the bottom and just fitting it in to make sure that it fit into the slots, and it fit well. So then it was a matter of getting the final size of the box so I could cut the plywood bottom down to size. One thing that was really nice about Doug Stowe's book is that I actually made a couple of shop-made pieces for that, including the crosscut sled that you saw there. So now here I am cutting into the piece of zebra wood that I got from my friend Tom, and I was really amazed after the first cut just how beautiful the grain pattern on the zebra wood looked. I really was just kind of stunned and had to take a second to appreciate it here. Just a beautiful grain pattern on that zebra wood. So pretty. Once that was cut, I made the design decision to rip that piece of zebra wood into two strips, and so I'm doing that on the table saw here. And once those two strips were cut, I cut a strip of oak that would become the accent strip or stripe down the middle of the lid of the boxes. So now I'm assembling the boxes here, and this is just wood glue and some tape to hold the boxes together as the glue joint's set up. And then I'm assembling the lids as well. So here are the 2 strips of zebra wood and the oak strip that sits in between them as the accent stripe. Once the glue had dried, I was ready to cut the rabbets that would allow the lid for the box to sit down into the bottom of it. So I'm cutting those rabbets on the table saw. And this process was a little bit fiddly. Then in the end, I think it worked out okay. Once I had gotten the side pieces cut, I was able to flip it up on its side. And I did a little bit of trial and error to get it at exactly the right height because I didn't want it to go too far. I considered using the router to make these cuts, but in the end I ended up just using the table saw because I thought it might be a little easier. And so there's the rabbit for one of the sides as well. Now, at the very end, I decided to add that bevel that I mentioned on the box lids to really accent the grain of the zebra wood. So I'm just taking this across, and the table saw is at some unknown angle, basically just enough to allow the blade to come into the zebra wood and expose that grain. And you can really kind of see that here. I was really pleased with how that one added little detail kind of pulled the whole design together and gave it a unique look. And the lid fits on nicely. After that, it was just a matter of sanding and more sanding. And more sanding still. Here's sanding the box down. I ended up easing the corners a little bit with sandpaper just to smooth it out and make it really nice and soft to the touch. And then the final step, of course, is applying finish. I went with a Danish oil, which I've used before on another project. This was the natural color, and it's always sort of the moment of truth. And as soon as I hit the top of the lid with the Danish oil, I was just blown away by just how good the zebra wood looked. It was really, really impressive, and I'm really pleased that I was able to use such a gorgeous piece of wood for this project. I realized a couple minutes into this that I had forgotten to put on protective gloves. So you'll see me stop here in a second and actually get my gloves on, and there they are. That made this process a lot simpler. Finishing the boxes themselves was pretty straightforward, and in the end, really, really happy with how they turned out. So once again, thanks for watching, and Merry Christmas, James and Mom.